Okay, welcome back to Lemon Lattice. Today we're going to go over slicers. So this is SuperSlicer. This is the one I like to use and the one I'm going to show you guys how to use. So we're going to search that, SuperSlicer GitHub, and I'll show you how to download it here. If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, you can see some of the background info on what SuperSlicer is, what it does. And then we're going to go over to the releases button on the right, and we're going to start looking through. So you can see this is a history of the different releases made. I currently use an older one. As they update these, there are some unstable ones until they get them all dialed in. So I like to use this one from January 4th, 2.3.57.9. I've had good success with this one. It's got good features in it. And as they update to new ones, and they are made stable, then I will update that in the future, but I like to give it a few months to catch up first. So we're just going to download that. You can see there's the Windows, the Mac options here in the Assets tab. So download that, go and extract it. So you're going to drop down here to the application, and you can just double click that one, just the regular SuperSlicer application there. So double clicking it will open it. In my case, Windows wants to make sure I trust it. So I'll do that, and it'll just open up right from there. And this is the interface. So when you first start it, this is what you're going to see. And then I'll take you through getting set up with the Sidewinder. So we're going to start, you can see here in print settings, filament settings, and printer settings. Those are the three tabs that are going to have all your different options there. And top right, you can see there's simple, advanced, and expert. And that's just going to show you the different levels of things you can control. So if we go up to configuration, let's get our printer loaded up. You can see they have a lot built in. So we're going to find artillery, Sidewinder. Now you can pick the X2. It's the same build volume as the Sidewinder X1. And then there's just a couple little things we'll change as we go. But you can see how many different options they have here. So if you have other printers, this is a good way to go using SuperSlicer. So choose that, and that'll bring you in. And now you've got artillery defaults set up for different printing profiles, for different filaments. And you've got your printer set up. So the X1 and the BL Touch is the bed leveling mesh, and the X2 comes with one of those. So we're going to select that. And then you can always save copies of things. So we're going to call this Sidewinder X2. And like I said, it comes with the BL Touch, so I'm not even going to put that because I know it's already there. You can add and remove profiles, either printers or you can add and remove different print profiles or filament settings if you want. And then you can just hover over things and you'll see what they do. You can either click things or hover things. You can search for different things as you go. So if you're ever looking for, say, perimeters or speed, you know you want to find a setting, but you're not sure where in all those options it is, you can search for them. You can see as we add to the advanced, we add in these different settings. So now we have things like feed rates and Z-lifts and all these different things we'll get into down the line. Then we go to expert, we've got even more. So that opens up G-code. I'm going to provide you guys with the G-code that I like to use. I've had some little things I didn't like about this one, probably because it wasn't made specifically for the X2. But if you are familiar with any G-coding commands, you can create your own start and end codes. You can see how it resets the extruder. It goes to home position. It draws these little purge lines. So there's a lot of these little steps that are basically the automatic steps to get up and going prior to a print and then after a print. And that's what these are. So like I said, I'll provide you with the ones that I'm using. And if you like those, you can go with them. We're going to jump in here and I'm going to show you how to slice and print something, and we'll go from there. We're going to take a look at a part. This isn't prosthetic or orthotic. It's just a part that's going to show you some geometry and some of how this works. So we're going to start here across our top bar on the left. We're going to add, And we're going to open up a part. So this is a fan duct for one of my other printers that I need to get printed. And this is just a part off of Thingiverse. So this is an STL that I downloaded, and it just pulls it in. And it auto places it in the center and on a flat surface. So you can use the tool panel on your left here to interact with that part. You can also use some of the ones up top. So delete all, arrange if you have multiple. You could copy and paste that, hit delete and get rid of it. Search and undo, redo. So we're going to select that part. We're going to come over to the left now. So move, you can slide this all around. You can drag it with the arrows and the box. You can scale parts. Just be careful with that. It's going to throw off some of your dimensions if you have dimension things. Your walls won't be the same thickness, stuff like that. So I end up not really using that one much, especially for the type of stuff we're doing. Rotate, you could grab and move things around in all three planes. And then place on face. This is an important one. So when you pull something in, you want to get a nice flat surface on your print bed so that you get good adhesion and a good start. So these are all the different spots that could be used for that. This one's designed to be printed that way, but we could turn it that way. You turn it that way. So those are just all the locations, but we're going to stick with the intended one. You can cut models. You can keep the uppers, keep the lower, so that kept the lower and got rid of that. Just Control Z, undo that. You could switch it, you could keep both. And then these are pretty cool features here. So you can paint on your supports. So you can change your brush size. And then you can use these keys here. So shift and shift left. So what you could do is draw on there. And where it's blue is where it's going to put supports. And if you do right click and red, that's where it won't put supports. So in this case, I don't need any supports. This was designed to print without them. And then same with the seam. You can tell this thing where you want your seam, and it'll follow that blue line. Otherwise, we're going to get into some of the settings, and I'll show you where those come into play. So I do that with sockets a lot. I'll draw kind of the path I want my seam to go up a socket or another type of device. So let's go up all the way to the top here. So that's 3D view. That's this screen. That's kind of where you interact with your model. And again, I'm able to use the 3D connection space mouse in SuperSlicer, whereas other slicers you can't. So I really like that feature. Your sliced preview is going to be this kind of intermediary step. This is nice because it gives you an idea of basically perimeters, what they walls, just different lines. Those are going to be different names and different in different slicers, but in this one, it's going to show them in yellow there. And then the G-code preview is the actual one that you can really interact with. This is where you're going to get a really good look at all the different feature types. So let's go through this real quick, and you can see what they are top left. So we've got external perimeters, or this orange color. We've got an internal perimeter. So that's anything not facing an outer wall. So like if you have a socket that's two perimeters, it's going to be two external perimeters because they're both open to the outside. In this case, it's externals and internals, but you can see kind of the same thing here. Where there's a hole, you have another external perimeter. Solid infill is going to be kind of your base layers. And then you're going to get to top solid infill. So these are just all kind of differentiators that you can change the settings on individually by all these different line colors. Overhangs, we might have some here. Let's see. Nope, so they're not showing any overhangs, but if there were, they would be kind of a shaded blue color, along an angle depending on what settings you have. So I just don't have it where it's identifying any right now. And then internal infill. So this is any space within a body that your perimeters don't fill up. You can tell it what style and what density of infill, and that's what this red grid pattern is here. This is where the names on the Lemon Lattice website come from. The grid, the honeycomb, and the gyroid, those are all infill patterns. And let's see, what else do we have? Bridges. So a bridge is anywhere that you have an unsupported upper surface. So as we go up here, we're about to have one show up. Right there. So these are long stretches that have to be laid out without any support. So there's some different settings you can use on a bridge. Oftentimes they want to droop and hang down, so you have to change your settings to avoid that. And then it goes back above that to solid infill and top infill. And then you can see here we have this silver color. That is gap fill. So that's anywhere that, and you can tell the slicer what volume of space to allow gap fill to be used. That's any space that can't fit a perimeter, or where maybe two perimeters, so generally these internal perimeters would be in there, but it's not big enough for both of them. So it's combined them into one single gap fill. And that's a little different from a thin wall, which is, I don't know if we have any in here, but a thin wall would be where there's not enough space for a full perimeter, and it can try to print a little piece that's thinner. So you can look at your slicer by line type, which gives you a good idea of what's going on. And then on the bottom here, you can see other things too. So there's a lot of choices. You can see travel moves. These will be important for surface quality and making sure you get what you want. So this is everywhere that the nozzle and the print head's going to travel without extruding. And then as you slide up and down on the right side here, let's go to one that's got it, you can come down to the bottom and you can drag this slider and watch what actually happens as it prints that single layer. So you can see it prints its internal and external perimeters, and then it's going to jump across and make that travel move to the other side. You can drag and click those. You can also just hit the up and down arrows and the left and right arrows down here. Other things you can see, wipe, we'll probably get into that later in more detailed videos. Things like retractions. This is where it's going to both stop extruding filament, but also pull back to prevent what's called stringing, which is when you make one of these moves, some filaments will kind of leave wispy parts. And the extruder can actually pull the filament backwards and retract it by the amount you tell it to and the speed you tell it to. And anywhere that we see a pink dot is going to be where a retraction is going to happen. And then these blue dots we just turned on are de-retractions. So that's going to be the start of a line where it's actually going to re-push some of that filament into the nozzle to prepare it. Some slicers might call it priming the nozzle, or de-retraction, or extra restart. Lots of different names depending on what system you're using. So this is a good time to point out that I like SuperSlicer because it's got a lot of options. It's basically built on the framework of PrusaSlicer, but with a lot of the options from CuraSlicer added into it. So I like it because it gives me lots of control over everything I want to do, and there's kind of an option for everything. And then it's an open source that the community is working on, so they add options as things are improved and and upgraded. So other things we can look at here. We don't have any tool changes. We don't have any color changes. Really, this is the only thing I really look at is going to be the travel and the retractions and de-retractions at times. But over here, you can see feature type, layer height, and every time you click on one of these, top left is going to be your key for that viewer. So you can see on our layer height, everything's at 0.8s down here, and most of this is at 0.2. Width, I have it set to a consistent width, so that's pretty much all showing the same except these gap fills, where it's going to extrude more of a width to fill that void in. Speed, you can see that changes based on the size of some of these. There's settings. If a layer or a feature is smaller than a certain length, you can tell to use a different speed or a different cooling amount on the cooling fan, which is what this is being printed for, is a parts cooling fan. Fan speed, you can see our default right now is set at 50% fan speed, but on some of these parts, like the bridge and some of these upper top infills, we have a higher fan to give a cleaner surface there. Layer time. Flow rate's a good one. You want to make sure you're never trying to push too much material, more than your machine can handle. In this case, our flow rates are really low. This is a very small, kind of detailed print, so no concerns on any of that. Tool and filament, that'd be if you're using multiple tool heads or multiple filaments. And temperature is a good one. You can change your temperature based on what you're doing also. So generally speaking, feature type's a good way to start. It's going to give you the best look at everything. And then we'll jump in here to print settings. So I have this one on PLA+. I'm actually going to use a carbon fiber PETG to print this part. So I can create that and save that as feature settings. So that's my print settings. You could save this as a specific type of part. So if I was going to be printing multiple fan ducts, I could call this carbon fiber PETG fan duct. I could call this BK socket 4mm walls, or flexible inner socket 3mm. Whatever your general profile is, you can save that there. And then over here in the filament, you can specifically save the type of filament. And then your printer settings is going to be whatever we've set based on that video we already went through. So again, lots of settings here. I always like to work on expert because that's why I use SuperSlicer. I use it for all of these. If we use the simple, there's not going to be a whole lot. So a part like this that's a little more detailed, I definitely want all these settings available. Same thing with some of our prosthetics and orthotics. There are going to be certain features or things that we want to do where having all of these settings is going to help a lot. So we've already sliced it. Anytime you change a setting, let's say we make this 3 perimeters and we come back to preview, you're going to have to hit slice now, and that'll reslice it based on that new one. So you can see in through the middle here, it added this third, which was basically a second internal for 3 total perimeters. Changed that to gap fill because it was trying to fit 2 in there. Pretty much everything else stays the same on this model, but we only want 2. One thing I do want to change on this one, so in slicing, is my height. This is a very common one. I actually want to print this at 0.4. Anything with carbon fiber, you don't want to try and print too small because it can jam up your nozzle more. So I'm using a bigger nozzle, a 0.8 nozzle with 0.4 layer height, and I'm using a hardened steel nozzle for that. So we'll save those settings. And then the other thing you can see over here is your details. So you can see the estimated time this will take to print, the cost, and that's going to be based on in your filament. You can set these different things. So you can set your cost to your spool. This one's not $28. That's for something that's a cheaper material, so this one's going to cost more than that. But that'll give you your estimated weight, and you can calibrate all these in so that you have a good idea going into a print if the spool that you're trying to use has enough material on it or not. The other thing here, you can do a little quick change up through here. And you can also edit and use some different features. So this is one of the other things that SuperSlicer has, that Prusa has, that Cura does not, but other ones like Simplify 3D has this, and it's a height range modifier. So you can say that from 0 to, let's say, 10 millimeters, I want a certain feature that I didn't have otherwise. And you could change that here, add settings, and pick what you want to change across that. If you don't want that, select it and delete. So in this case, we're not going to change any of those, but that'll be more advanced stuff that sometimes you might want to use. That is the introduction to slicers. Let me know if you have any questions. We can answer those through the forums or just directly through any interactive sessions we might do. So let me know, and look forward to showing you more with O&P products as we get into designing those.